It looks like we're streaming on Facebook Live. Everything is going. We have participants coming in, so that's a good thing. I want to welcome everybody to Relevant Conversations. This is a series that we created that is really aimed at trying to build a community, an open forum, so that we can have some conversations that have a shared perspective where we either revisit the perspectives that are old or share our new perspectives so that we can come to empathize, we can come to understand, learn, and certainly cope with this ever-changing landscape of this new world that we're living in. Today's panelist that is joining me today is Mr. Dave Kerpen, and I am excited to be able to introduce you to him to you. He is first of all, I'm going to flip the list. I'm going to tell you that he is, first of all, a family man. That is probably the biggest highlight to be able to say for him of his career. He's got 3 children, and he is the husband to one, and I'm going to quote Dave, one amazing business partner. He and his wife are in business together. So not only do they have to work out that relationship at home, but they work out that relationship in business. And they also make that public. They started a podcast called In This Together. And it is a good podcast to listen to see how they're trying to manage the challenges of this world that we're living in. And it's a good one to have. He is also a New York Times bestselling author. He is the author of 4 books. He is the author of Likeable Social Media, which was his first book, Likeable Business, Likeable Leadership, and The Art of People, some of which we're going to be talking about today. He's a serial entrepreneur. His most recent venture, actually, I left off the list because I do believe it is Remember Live, correct, Dave?
Remembering, yeah.
Remembering Live, which is basically an online platform that you can hold memorial services for family members who may have died, and obviously under the conditions we're living right now, where we cannot congregate and get together, it live streams those services so people can participate. So what an amazing thing. You are also co-founder and CEO of the Apprentice, excuse me. I want to leave off the article there because it's a platform that really does a good job of connecting college students with opportunity with entrepreneurs to be able to plug them in and have meaningful paid internships and to get them a jump start in their career. He is the chairman and co-founder of Likeable Media, which is an award-winning social content media marketing firm that basically primarily focuses on fairly large brands. He's done everything from Johnson & Johnson to GE to Verizon to 1-800-Flowers to Capital One to StubHub to Redbox, Avon, Endemans, and the list is really long. He is chairman also of Likeable Local. And this is a company that primarily is a software platform that's really geared to be able to accommodate and to assist small business owners. And that those are the 5 companies basically that he runs. He is one of Entrepreneurs Magazine top 10 up-and-coming leaders. He is a LinkedIn top leadership author of 2013. And he's been featured on plenty of television where you may have seen him on the Today Show. You may have seen him on CNBC's On the Money, BBC, ABC, CBS Early Show, New York Times, and certainly countless blogs. He's a global keynote speaker, and he's also a mentor to thousands. And I will tell you firsthand, based on everything that I can observe about Dave, he is a servant, and he loves to serve people, and he takes great joy in doing that. So Dave, welcome to the program. I'm very excited to have you with us today. So thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark. And boy, that intro was just unbelievably kind, and I have to apologize to our audience because it was long, and I certainly don't want to bore y'all with my list of companies, but I deeply appreciate your intro. And Mark, as you suspected, I'm sure you hit the nail on the head with respect to my most important job as a father and husband, and too often that's at the end of the bio. So I love the fact that you brought it to the beginning of the bio.
Well, I definitely wanted to flip that because I can tell you it's evident in everything you do. So whether you're posting on LinkedIn, whether you're posting on Facebook, the podcast that you created, you're very real about your personal life. You give your wife so much kudos. You're constantly talking about those challenges and how you overcome those challenges. And you guys are definitely, I would say you've named your podcast very adequately In This Together, because it appears that you both are. You can even see pictures of both of you and definitely see that chemistry there. So I appreciate that. It's very encouraging to me. So it was worth putting at the top of the list. So I appreciate that. So why don't you introduce our audience. Tell us a little bit about your story. And I know it's a long story. So I said, let's give it 5 minutes and let's see if you can get through that in 5 minutes. But tell our audience a little bit about yourself, where you got started, and where you are.
5-minute version.
All
So,
right, 5 minute version.
so thanks again for having me. Grew up in New York, Brooklyn. Went to public schools. My father has bipolar disorder, so that was one of the things that that colored my growing up and helping me become a little more independent, a little more responsible at an early age. I went to college in Boston University on a full scholarship to help me be able to. I wouldn't have been able to afford it otherwise. And I studied education and psychology. Wanted to be a teacher, but I ended up working while I was in college at the baseball. I'm a huge baseball fan, so I worked at the ballpark, at the Boston Garden and Fenway Park as a ballpark vendor. One of those guys that sells food up and down the aisles.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't know that the vending business is based on commission and tips only, so you don't get paid a salary. It's also a seniority-based system, so you have to work for years to get the beer. That's the high-selling product, of course. So I sold a product called Crunch and Munch, buttery toffee popcorn with peanuts. And I sold 6 boxes my first day, got paid the legal minimum, came back the second day, developed a shtick, singing, dancing, juggling boxes. And before long, I was selling quite a bit of Crunch and Munch. And throughout the process, by the end of my 3 years as a ballpark vendor, I was making about $1,000 a night in commission and tips. So I think that experience taught me to think out of the box. It helped me fall in love with sales, marketing, PR, and entrepreneurship, because I was really an entrepreneur, working entrepreneurial mentality within that system. Eventually graduated from school and decided I had to get a real job. I ended up working at Disney in radio sales. And I was the #1 salesperson in the country until this woman started working in my office. And she dropped me to #2 within 3 months. I knew I had to, I knew I had to marry her and go into business with her. There was one slight problem. She was married already. She ended up moving from Boston to New York with her husband to work on her marriage, trying to make that work. I did what anyone with unrequited love would do, Mark. I left Disney and went on a reality TV show to find true love, a really sleazy show on Fox called Paradise Hotel. It was back in 2003. So who knows if any of your listeners watched that show, but it was one of the early reality TV shows. It was sexy singles at a luxury resort and me, which made for really interesting television. After Paradise Hotel, lived in LA a little while, D-list celebrity. But it was actually very, very downtime for me. I was not creating any value. I was not really doing anything positive with my life. I ended up reconnecting with that woman that I had worked with at Disney. And I called her from the red carpet at the American Music Awards to kind of show off, even though I hadn't talked to her in over a year. And I said, "What are you up to?" And she said, "Going through a divorce, actually." And I said, "I'm so sorry to hear that." I told her a little white lie saying I had to be in New York next week to meet with my agent, which obviously didn't exist. And we started dating, and Carrie, the same woman that I had been with at Disney, and I fell in love again. And we ended up getting married. When we got married, we couldn't afford a traditional wedding, but I wanted a very large wedding. So we partnered with the local baseball team and created a sponsored wedding called Our Field of Dreams. Raised $100,000 in sponsorships and $20,000 for charity. And it was an amazing, amazing wedding as well. And after the wedding, our wedding vendors, 1-800-Flowers.com, who had sponsored our flowers, and Entenmann's, who had sponsored our desserts, came to us and said, this was great. What are you guys doing next? We couldn't get married again, so we started a company instead. That was our first company, Likeable Media, which, as you said, has morphed into one of the leading social media and content marketing companies that works with brands. And then over the last several years, I've been very, very fortunate to build a few other companies. You mentioned them. To write a few other books. You mentioned them. And most important, to raise 3 kids with Carrie in our home in Port Washington. So I've been very, very blessed, Mark. I've had a crazy, very, very different, sort of atypical journey. I think I left out the part when I first came to New York after Paradise Hotel, and I just had that experience of not doing anything valuable. I actually put my teaching degree to work for the first time, and I taught for 3 years. So I taught for 3 years before becoming an entrepreneur. So yeah, I've had a very different path, but I wake up and pinch myself every day because I am so fortunate and so grateful and I've been able to connect with quite a few amazing people and have some amazing, amazing mentors through the years. And so, you know, in the years to come, I plan on hopefully giving back as much as I can and helping create more entrepreneurs and just raising my children to value entrepreneurship and creating and thinking outside of the box. And my 5 minutes just went up. I did it.
Well, you did. Hey, that was great. You got that down, don't you? Well, I tell you what, what I love about everything that you've just told is you've been very successful. There's been no doubt about that. But as I read your books and as you share your stories and as you're very, very raw and real with even everything that goes on with you, I mean, even the good, bad, and the ugly, you just really put it all out on the table. It makes you an extremely relatable person, and you've really never lost sight. Despite your success, you have remained incredibly grounded, it seems. And I think that is what has been a huge appeal and probably what has made you the influencer that you really are, especially on LinkedIn. And, you know, you can go through your LinkedIn profile, you can see, you know, all the recommendations from, past employees to people that you have worked with. And and even some from incredibly credible circles. Adam Grant being one of them says you're probably the most likable guy on the planet. And that just speaks volumes, and it's huge. When I got introduced to you, it was actually 2018, and it wasn't really introduced to you, it was introduced to your books. And, I'm a prolific reader, so I tend to read, 30 to 50 to 60 books a year. So I'm just constantly reading. And when I came across your book, I mean, even back in 2008, the world was different then. Everything was ginned up, everything was going. And, your book still resonated with me because it just spoke to the very basic principles of people, very basic principles to business, which can get easily discounted by some. And I think you even mentioned when you released your book, you said, there's going to be critics here that look at this and say, this is all common sense. But the fact of the matter is, it's the things that we need to resort back to, the things that we need to go revisit. And that's why I wanted you on this show. This is a totally different world that we're living in at this time. And I'm just kind of curious, the world in which you, and that was back in about 2012, 2013, when you were putting the books out?
It depends on the book. I think
the likable social media
was 2012. My first book. Yeah.
Your first book. And then I think most of them were released through 2013. It's kind of a short.
13 was Likable Business. Likable Art of People was, I think, 2017.
Okay, 2017. I was introduced to it in 2018. Okay, so it wasn't too long from which you wrote it. Now that you see the world where it is today, and you look back at all the principles that you wrote, whether it be likable, whether it be likable business, whether it be the art of people, what stands out to you? I mean, have you gone back and revisited those principles? Would you write that book any differently under the current circumstances?
Yeah, great question. Well, so you mentioned 4 books, and let's discount one because one was a direct to Amazon, a Likable Leadership. So let's take the other 3. So Likable Social Media was my first. And if you write about social media, the reality is things change very, very quickly. So not only would I go back, I have gone back. Actually, this latest one is the 3rd edition. So right. it's both exciting and also a challenge to write a social media book because things do change just dramatically. But that being said, I still believe many of the principles of likable social media, the things like listening and responsiveness and authenticity, those don't change. What does change, right, of course, is the platforms and how to use it and how to use the advertising platforms and all those types of things. So that does, in fact, require revisiting and rewriting those books. The other books, Likable Business and Art of People, I think are fairly. Timeless is such an arrogant word. So they're evergreen. I mean, I think they're books that hopefully the principles in those 2 will last even with changing times. Because of course things do change, and we've seen that in the last 2 months, as well as better than really any 2-month period in certainly in my lifetime, and probably in just about all of the audience's lifetimes. So things can change, but I'd like to think that a lot of the strategies and principles of living a good life and you know, being kind and thinking about walking in the shoes of others and those sorts of things hopefully last a long time.
Well, let's talk about the book you said went straight to Amazon, because that was Likeable Leadership. And the foreword to that book, I thought was amazing. I thought Jeffrey, is it Hazlitt's?
Hazlitt, yeah.
Hazlitt's, okay. I thought he did a phenomenal job being really concise and to the point, and mapping out that. And he started with the Vince Lombardi quote, because Vince Lombardi has said, you know, that leaders aren't born, they're made. And of course, he was a very successful coach, but we know his leadership style was markedly different than the leadership style that you're presenting in the books. But it also made me think of one other thing, and this is actually why I wanted to bring you on to talk about these things. The one thing that I think is most attributable to Vince Lombardi, besides the fact that he won, is that he had never abandoned the fundamentals, and used to start his training camps by holding up a football, and you probably remember what he would say: "Gentlemen, this is a football." I mean, you're saying that to very experienced guys already coming in, starting training camp, and you hold a football up and you tell them that that's what it is. And it really is as basic as that. And because he mastered the fundamentals and stuck to the fundamentals, that's why he was successful as he really was. And that's what I see you doing here in this book. I think you're right. I think they're timeless principles. I think they're adapted to more of the world that we live in today, but they're basic fundamentals that we're never going to get to abandon. So when you look at the world that exists today, so we've got an extremely polarized world because of the political scene. We have people who are experiencing probably anxieties on levels that we haven't experienced in mass before. So let's go back to the art of people. So if you had to pick and say, you know, we need to bring every one of those 11 simple principles that you said, they all come to the surface, and they really all apply depending on the circumstances and venue. But if you were to say, okay, there's 2 or 3 of those there that meet more of the immediacy of what we need to be dealing with right now, and how we can cope and how we can manage this. You have 2 or 3 of those that really just kind of jump out as being the most applicable and relatable in a time like this?
Sure. I would talk about listening, and you know, listening is the single most underrated skill, and it's also the skill that most people think they're good at when they're not so good. Okay, so if you ask a room full of 100 people, how many of you are good listeners? You know, 90 of them will raise their hands. But the reality is, most of us are not good listeners. Most of us, when other people are talking, we are waiting to talk, or we are thinking about what we're going to say next. That's not listening. Listening is being on blank slate and focusing exclusively on the person that's talking and what they have to say. And the way you can test how good a listener you are is to develop some of the more advanced skills that I write about in Art of People, like mirroring, reflecting back what you're hearing. And then the most advanced, validation, really walking in their shoes. And I talk in Art of People about the platinum rule, right? So we all grew up with the golden rule: do unto others as you'd want done to yourself. But I think that rule is faulty, believe it or not, because we're all different. So if I do unto you, Mark, as I'd want done to myself, that might not be what you'd want done to you. So the platinum rule is listen, be attuned, and then do unto others as they would want done. And if you're not sure, ask. So I would say that. I mean, I would, and the reason I would say that now, I would say that always, but the reason I think that's even more pronounced now is when times are tough, when we're anxious, when we're stressed out, and I get it. Pretty much everyone I know is completely stressed out, right? I mean, people don't know when they're going to get their next paycheck. They don't know when they're going to get, if they can open up their businesses. They don't know, you know, if they can get a job. They don't know how to teach their kids at home. I mean, we're all very, very high stress and high anxiety right now. So it makes listening that much harder. But it's all the more important nonetheless. And then the second thing I would point to, which again probably won't shock you, Mark, as somebody that's followed me here, is gratitude. And I practice gratitude practices formally every single day, and I try to teach people that work for me and people that I mentor to do the same. I have found that gratitude it's truly a wonder drug. Gratitude helps us get from a bad mood to a good mood to a great mood to ecstatic, and it's free. And so when I'm down, I write a gratitude list, 100 things I'm grateful for. I write a thank you card. Every day at dinner, our family goes around the room and everyone says, one person they're grateful for at the table and one person they're grateful for is not at the table. I've begun that practice at the end of team meetings as well. And I just find it's a really authentic gratitude is a really, really powerful way to improve one's mood, and get better perspective about even, especially when times are tough, because they could always be a lot tougher.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you talk a lot about mindset too in your book. And I think that gratitude probably is the reset for that, because right. you go back and it causes you to reframe the world. And if there's any time right now that we need to do that, I mean, it is right now. We need to really reframe that world. If I may, can I introduce a third one from your book that I think that really kind of dovetails and fits in right that? You talk about connecting with people and this idea of building relationships. And you really boil it down to the fact that success really all depends on the fact that people matter and we have to be building. So how can we be in this time, in the vacuum in which we kind of live with everything that's going on, especially being distanced, how can we be building and revisiting those relationships?
Yeah, so it's all about the 5 most important words that I believe, which is how can I help you? And it's about asking that with no strings attached and asking that totally authentically. I tell the story in the book about how I get hit up from salespeople all the time, commercial real estate salespeople, financial planners, insurance salespeople, et cetera, and everyone wants my time and everyone wants my money, and very hard to respond to everyone, but I try to respond at least kindly, thank you to everyone. But there was one guy, Michael Kislin was his name, and he reached out. He said, I just want 15 minutes. I'm not going to try to sell you, and I just have one question for you. He really piqued my interest with that. So I invited him into my office, and he came in and he said, tell me a little bit about what you're up to. And I talked about what I was working on. I was actually raising some money at that point for one of my companies, for like a local. And he said, how can I help you? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, here are a couple of ideas, because it's one thing to say, how can I help you? It's another thing to actually have some possibilities planned and built in. He said, maybe I can introduce you to a venture capitalist, for instance. And I said, oh yeah, sure. That would be great. Well, that would be amazing. Wow. You barely know me, but okay, sure. And then I said, all right, well, thank you. And, tell me your pitch, about what you do and how I can help you now. And he said, no. I promise no sales pitch, and you will not have a sales pitch here. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to introduce you to the VC. He did. And then about 6 months later, and I had a little pot of money, I called him up and I said, hey, I know you never even really pitched me, but I think you're a financial planner, and I really already know, like, and trust you. So, here, let's get started. He's been my financial planner since. And so I've referred to, obviously, a bunch of clients to him over the years. And so I think that's the way to build connections, right? And it's hard. It's hard for people. I literally just before this video, I was on a call with a publisher that I'm talking to about doing my next book. And I said to her, we have the conversation. I said, hey, if there's any way I can help you, let me know. And she said, well, no, we've already got all the follow-ups. And I said, no. I don't mean like with this. I mean like in life. I mean like, I happen to, you're a young person that's working in the publishing business. Like I know, 6 authors and lots of publishers and lots of agents and all that. And if I can be helpful to you in your career, all you need, I'm happy to help. And she almost didn't get it because it felt so foreign, because so rarely do we, I guess, go out of our way to like just ask that and really mean it. But I think when we do that, we can really, A, leave an impression with people, B, build, to your point, a really, really strong connection with people. And C, it actually kind of feels good, right? That's my other hack. My other hack, besides gratitude, is like being kind. Like acts of kindness actually improve our mood as well, which allow us to be in a more positive mindset, which allows us to be successful. You know, I'm sorry, I'm going to riff on this for 2 more seconds.
That's okay. Absolutely.
Let's talk again. But there's this is a big pet peeve of mine. There's this huge myth out there that money brings us happiness, and then once we're happy, we can pause and be grateful. Money or success brings us happiness, and then we can be grateful. Here's the crazy thing. It's actually literally the opposite. Gratefulness makes us happy, and when we're happy, we can become successful and make lots of money. It's like simple, but it's true.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of, I guess, very unconventional thinking. We have a lot of platitudes that we just kind of accept as true. I was having a conversation not too long ago with a good business colleague of mine, and you know, he was going through some seminar training that he was required to go through for work, and he came back and he said, you know, I just kind of get sick of hearing the same old platitudes, because nobody wants to revisit them and say, you know, let's look at this, let's really be critical and see what these things are really made of. And you're right, sometimes we got to flip them on top of their head and for them to really make sense. And I think you're absolutely dead on. And you've probably been around people who you've seen that, not only yourself, but I think the mentors that you've kind of surrounded yourself with, you've probably seen that in their lives as well. And hands down, 100% of the time, it tends to work out, would you say?
100%, without fail. And that's actually another big part of Art of People. What I write about is surrounding yourself with better, smarter, kinder people than we are. And I've been so blessed to have so many amazing mentors in my life. And yeah, I mean, gratitude and work ethic and mindset, these are things that are absolutely the norms and the way of life for just about every mentor that I've been fortunate enough to have.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing. One of the things I love that you said in your book, because you said you were creating a mentorship program at your business, and then you looked and you're like, well, where's mine? You know, who's my mentor? And you were encouraged to start an advisory board. And so you tell that story about starting that advisory board and how critical that came to be for you to surround yourself with people who were smart and who were grounded and who had the same, you know, principles, at least, even though they had a lot of different perspective and worldly experience to bring to the table. And then you said, we all deserve the ability to have an advisory board, even if you're a stay-at-home mom looking to see what she can do next.
Why are advisory boards only for big companies? That makes no sense to me, right? I mean, anyone out there that's watching this can get together really smart people that they admire into a room, or virtual room these days, but
virtual
still,
room.
And have a conversation and get some support and connect with each other. There's an amazing multiplicity effect in getting a whole bunch of people together that are focused on you. And if you give them valuable content and connections with each other, then you know you're helping them too. So yeah, I think that's probably the number one. I take a lot of calls in my office hours, which of course people are happy to spend some time with me, you know, no strings attached, pro bono, how can I help you type stuff. ScheduleDave.com, really easy to.
And I can confirm that. So I'm living testimony that you make good on that promise. And I know that you've put that out there before and you've been absolutely overwhelmed. And even gotten written up in the New York Times about it one time, and had to answer over 900 tweets.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, right. I mean, exactly. I mean, sometimes you have to be patient to wait a little bit, but I do. Yeah. One of my values is responsiveness, and so I do my best to get back to people. But why did I bring that up? Yes, because one of the most common things that I help folks with that reach out and schedule time with me on my office hours is, you know, going about building that advisory board, especially for people that maybe don't have businesses. So they're not necessarily used to that way of thinking. But yeah, I mean, I know quite a few people who have been able to put together an advisory board that's been very helpful for them.
Yeah. Well, I know you're going to have to go, and I don't know that we're going to have too much ability to kind of get into the likable business book, but let me just go ahead and let everybody know. We probably should have done this on the front end, so my apologies for not doing that. But if you're on the Zoom call today, or you're participating in Facebook Live, we want to give away, I want to give away 10 copies. We want to give away 10 copies of any book of Dave's, of your choosing. And so if you will comment in the comment section and let us know you're here and leave a comment either on Facebook Live or on Zoom, we will be happy to get those copies to you, and we will take that in consideration. And I tell you, it'll be some of the best reading that you've done in a while. And I agree that it is really getting us to go back to the basics, really getting us to look at the fundamentals of what it really means to understand that people matter, because people matter at all times, but especially we need to revisit that topic when we are all hurting to some level, to some degree, all together, and we are in quite a storm. And so I want to encourage you to, whether that's likable business or whether it is in social media, and that's your take, or you really want to get onto the art of people, they are all worthy reads. They are all highly recommended, and we would love to make some of those copies available to you today. I really wish we could have got into your pyramid, but
let me just say, give me a moment to say thank you very, very much, Mark, because you're very, very kind, and you're kind to give away the books, and I do hope they can be helpful for folks out there. I love to joke about Likable Business, because Likable Business is my best reviewed book, but it's my least selling book by far. Nobody buys it.
And I don't understand that.
Well, here's what I've come to realize, Mark. It has a very bad cover. I don't like the cover. And I've learned, unfortunately, that pretty much everyone does, in fact, judge a book by its cover. So, oh well, but I appreciate it. Has been, I mean, people that read it, to your point, I do feel like they get some good stuff out of it, but unfortunately, very few people have read it. Yeah. So if you give away that one in particular, I am, well, either way, I'm so grateful for you having me and for you bringing me to a new audience. And it's just a delight to chat with you. And yeah, I mean, we need what I write about, basic stuff, not rocket science, a lot of common sense. And yet I really do believe that we need to go back to these things more than ever before, and preach kindness and gratitude and listening and the platinum rule and these sorts of things. I just think our society, we were struggling along about 2 months ago, and now it's like struggling. Whoa. Obviously, we've just hit a major inflection point, and I am still massively optimistic. I'm a true optimist about the human spirit and about this planet and this world. But we have some challenges ahead of ourselves, for sure. We do.
If you don't mind, can we conclude and bring your wife into the picture here? Because she said something at the end of your book.
She might be on a call, so I don't know if I can literally.
No, I'm not. Well, if you want to, that's fine. But I'm talking about just something that she said to you one night when you guys were just sitting, and it came out of nowhere, kind of came out of the blue. But as you probably had finished your book on the art of people, and the subtitle of your book may give some, it may, because it says, here are the 11 simple principles to really get everything that you want. You may be mistaken that some people might think that that's a selfish intent, but you are very clear in this book over and over and over again that what you do has to be because it's the right thing to do. And I don't want to get her quote wrong, because I thought it was masterful when she said, the ultimate paradox is that the secret to getting everything you want at work and life is treating people well, not trying to get everything you want. And really, that was really such a great capstone to your book, because it really buttoned it up and it put the pretty little pink bow on that. And she really got it. She nailed it. And I know she nailed it. And I hope that that's what we leave everybody with today. It's really not about getting what you want. It's just the fact that when you're the likable person that you need to be and the leader that you need to be, and you understand not only yourself, but how other people work, and you try to work with that, you will find yourself getting the things that you need, if it is you put the others first and you do like Dave says. And Dave is the epitome of that. That's the only reason that we're even having this broadcast today, because he was generous enough with his time, and he walks his talk, and that's why he's here with us today. I appreciate you sharing that time with us. I know that you have to go. I would encourage people, again, to continue to put messages in the chat. We want to give away those 10 books. And Dave, I appreciate you in our hearts. and our thoughts and our prayers are with you and with everybody in New York. It's one of the epicenters of this whole thing, and you're still our brethren, and we want to know that we are certainly keeping an eye out, and we keep you in our prayers and our thoughts. And I know you are a servant, and I know you have responded probably very well to that, as people have even come to you to ask, how do we focus now? And I know you're standing by ready to answer that question, and you duly answer that. You and genuinely want to know how you can help, and you've done that today, and I appreciate it very much.
My great pleasure. I do have to jump, but great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And, appreciate your time.
And I wish everyone a super blessed, likable rest of everyone's day.
Absolutely. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for being here.